Good morning. Welcome to Hometown Heroes. I'm Rick Irving, my co-host Mary Staffeld, and today we have a real treat for you. We've got BJ Prior, and BJ is a great supporter of our veterans and especially our Vietnam veterans because she was part of getting those troops to Vietnam and then bringing them home. So, BJ, welcome to Hometown Heroes. Again, this is your second visit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting me back. I feel real honored. And any chance that I have to share and talk about my heroes, the Vietnam veterans, I always say yes. And I also wanted to thank you again for roll call. I know you guys work really hard along with the board. I know there's many of you that put it together. But that being a member of Roll Call has been a real blessing to me and to Linda Lou too, my co-writer. And so um, it's just been an extra blessing at the end of my life to be involved with Roll Call. So thank you. for all you
We're,
do.
we're incredibly grateful that you're part of us.
Thank you.
Absolutely, because you and Linda bring so much to roll call and to our veterans. So,
Yeah. Linda Lou, she had no idea when she helped me be my co-writer for the book that her whole life would kind of change in these last 8 years as we traveled the United States. And the reason why we were able to travel is because she is real tight with her high school classmates. And so all of them live all over. And so what we would do is we would call them and go up and spend a few days with them. And then we would make phone calls ahead of time to go speak to veterans or to retirement places. And so, her part has been enormous. And I don't think I could have done half of this without her, especially her ability to help me be a co-writer for the book.
and you go to a lot of places, not just in the DFW Metroplex, but around the country.
Yep. Gone to the East Coast, South. We go to Wisconsin a lot. So I want to give a big shout to all of our Vietnam veterans up there in Wisconsin,
And,
but Virginia, Savannah, Georgia, in LA. And why I went to Montana, so met a lot of veterans up there. So big shout to all of our Vietnam veterans across the United States.
and you talk about the book, and you have a book. It's called
Mhm,
Behind My Wings,
mhm,
and it's a book that I've read a couple of times, and
mm.
it's just a great book. And it tells your story and the stories of many of our Vietnam veterans.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I was a flight attendant for 40 years, signed up for those military flights. I was in my 20s. Um, I knew that I didn't want to go into the military, um, but it was my way to serve. And so when I signed up, we had to go through all the shots and everything. I didn't go through boot camp, but it just felt like I did. We had to go through a lot of safety, a lot of information um, that was important for us to know in flying over into war zones. And I did it. We were only supposed to do it for 1 year, and I never could figure out why the company only wanted us to sign up for 1 year. But after my first year passed, I thought, no, I want to keep staying out here. I want to keep doing this, because I fell in love with the soldiers, heard their stories. I mean, my whole life just kind of changed. Especially as we talked earlier, my parents were deaf, didn't have really hardly any military. So I was so unaware of veterans and soldiers. And, so anyway, I never forgot those 2 years. And for that reason, I wanted to write my book about just those 2 years.
And whenever you talk about flying to Vietnam, your airline was contracted with the government
Yes.
to take our troops from the United States to Vietnam, and then on the return trip, you'd bring those veteran or those military members back to the United States.
Yes.
You'd see these fresh guys,
Yeah.
probably all scared to death about going to war,
Yes.
and then you pick up a load who had been to war. And a lot of those people you took over there, they didn't come back. Some of them got killed. A lot of them got injured. But the majority of them came back with post-traumatic stress that we didn't know what was back then.
Correct.
And so
we did not know what PTSD was. That's for sure. Going over, though, I want to emphasize they were so brave, so courageous. They had just come out of boot camp, ready to serve our country without a shadow of a doubt. Yes, they would share with me, they were scared to go to war. Definitely did not want to go to Vietnam. And we had no idea what kind of battles in the jungle that they would face. But I'm telling you, they were so brave going over. And then coming back, of course, they loved being on the Freedom Bird. They loved coming back to the world. I knew their terminology because of all what they shared with us. But they didn't really go into depth on what they encountered, other than the most prominent thing that was shared the most from them was how many were killed in their unit, how many soldiers didn't make it, their buddies next to them, how they had to live with that, how they had to say, they had to support one another, fight for one another to survive. But it's like, I don't want to get to know you because you might die. And, and it's just harder. So a lot of that they shared, and it hurt them the most. And they would always say to me, and this was the majority of them, why not me? Why them? Why did they die and not me? So those were real feelings. And like I said, we had no idea about PTSD. And now I've come to realize why the company only wanted us to sign up for a year, because we would experience things, see things. My first trip was into Saigon. And as I shared before, I cried on my first trip. I didn't want anybody to see me. So I ran up into the flight deck and closed the door and had a little cry. And I said, okay, if you're going to do these trips, you can't ever cry again. And I didn't. I stuffed tears. I became not hard, but it's like I tried not to let anything affect me, whatever they told me and whatever I saw in the hospital. And anyway, so it's like, then I realized 20 years later, I told my husband when we got married that I flew the troops to Vietnam and, told him about what I did, but I never shared any emotions until we went and saw Forrest Gump. That did it. Before the movie was over with, I was bawling. I was crying so hard, walking out on the aisle, getting out of the theater. My husband had his arms around me. I cried for a long time when we got out of the theater.
Yeah, this was 69, 70 time frame.
I flew there 69 to 71. We got married in 75. So 1995 is when I finally was able to break. And so now I cry easy, real easy. And it's like, it's okay because I couldn't share my feelings back then, but I can now. So I'm free to cry. I'm good. I'm good.
You were young whenever you went over there, 21 or so.
Well, actually, I was the oldest. I was 24,
Okay.
25, 26 while I was still flying there. Yeah, that's me in the middle. And yeah, so, and I'm still in touch with those two beautiful gals, Marcia and Linda. Yeah. And it's not easy for any of us to talk about it, just like the soldiers. We did our job, and we hated having to take our young men to war. And we didn't even realize the magnitude of them being killed so much in the jungles. We didn't. Yeah, that was my graduation class. You can see I graduated in 68. That was a long time ago. Yeah. And we had to wear a hat, pearls, a string of pearls, and we wore gloves. And we had to wear that in Vietnam with nylons. Yeah.
The airline industry has certainly changed over the years, hasn't it?
Yes, it
That
has.
was very strict back then.
Very,
Yeah,
very.
yeah.
Yeah.
Height, weight, everything. You had to be
Mhm.
within all kinds of. It
Yeah.
was almost like going to boot camp. Sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, we started out with over 40 and we ended up with 30 because every day, if you didn't do what they wanted you to do, if you wouldn't cut your hair, if you wouldn't wear a girdle under your dress, if you gained any weight, you were gone. I mean, it's, yeah, it was that way. So yeah, it was hard going through training, and it was hard back in those days. Of course, we didn't know anything about discrimination. There was a law passed in 1967. We were hired in 68. That companies could not discriminate if you wore long hair, if you had to wear glasses, or if you gained weight and all of that. We were young, just,
But you kind of got the bug whenever you were younger and made a flight from Los Angeles to Sacramento, correct?
Yes, that was when I was 13 years old. And I knew just flying that short trip, looking out the window, it was a night flight. My parents were able to buy me a ticket to go visit a classmate who had moved away, and I went to visit her. And I know God's hand was on me then, even though I wasn't walking with him. But I knew then that's what I wanted to do when I grew up, was to be. Back then we were called air hostesses. Then we were called stewardesses, and of course now flight attendant. Yeah. We could sit in the engines really easy. Yeah. Yeah, and that's one of my first flights in the Philippines. When we would leave in the Philippines to go to Vietnam.
Would you have some direct flights from the United States to Vietnam, or would you
No,
always stop
no.
at the Philippines? Or
Yeah, our first stop was at Continental, and all the airlines. All the airlines were contracted by the government, not just ours. And we flew. Continental was based out of Los Angeles, and so we'd go to all the bases up and down California, pick up our troops. That was a 707 320 series. It held 165 passengers, and there was no divider. So it was all one class when you walked on. We had the two galleys forward and back. And we learned not to let anybody on the aircraft when we were in Vietnam. We couldn't tell the difference between the South and the North Vietnamese. So the company rule was, we had to clean the aircraft, and we were fine with that. But that didn't bother us back then. So, but anyway, 4 jet engines. It was a great airplane. Jet engines. So thank goodness they weren't propellers.
it was a long trip anyway, but if you'd been in a propeller-driven airplane, it'd be even
Oh,
longer.
yeah. So the first stop out of LA would be Honolulu. We got off, the soldiers stayed with the aircraft. I always tell people it took our soldiers out of LA 22 hours to get to Vietnam.
Mm.
If they went by ship in San Francisco, once they passed under the bridge, it took them 22 days. So, but it was hard on them. They could get off the airplane in the Hawaii, the Philippines, and then, of course, Vietnam. So that was our way of getting over there. Coming back, we went everywhere. We went to Thailand. We went to Japan. We went to Guam. We transported troops all over Asia, And that picture there, actually, our dresses even got a little bit shorter. And, I always say, yeah, we throw our dresses in the washing machine and somehow they just kept shrinking. They were so strict with us when we first graduated. But
Had to,
anyway,
had to wear short
enough
hair,
about me.
but after
Yeah, you had to wear short hair.
you could grow it out, but you had to have a wig, didn't you?
Right. A lot of us wanted to grow our hair out. And if we did, it still couldn't touch our collars. So we'd wear wigs. And that's when we had fun on the airplane with the guys, from Hawaii to the Philippines. That was the longest flight. And we had no entertainment, 165 guys and 4 of us. So we did our best to entertain our troops. So we would decorate and we just do fun things. And always during the meal service, we always did it. We'd call back a soldier to the galley. And I think I've told some of these stories before. I hate to repeat them, but we'd have fun. I'd take off my wig, put it on them, put my apron on them, give them a pot of coffee and send them out in the aisle. And, we just tried to do everything we could to keep the morale up. It was tougher coming back home. All they wanted to do was sleep, and we let them sleep. And then when we were ready to serve them food, I've said this before, we'd spray perfume on us and walk through the cabin. That was the only way we wanted to wake them up. Yeah, that's my brother and myself. Yeah, I got to see him 3 times in Cameron Bay. Quite remarkable, really. He told me that he had a safe job and that he worked in the hospital and in administration, which I believe he did. However, he had his moments of patrolling and having to carry his rifle. The last time I saw him in Vietnam, he met me and his face was all a mess. Somebody had thrown a grenade in his office and the filing cabinets and everything blew up. Could have taken his life, but it didn't. So, he worried about me and I worried about him. Yeah. Yeah. There's our hairdo can get long. That was a Hawaii trip. Yeah. So I love flying, and I've told this story before, and I have another story. I love to talk about the soldiers that I've met, at different places. But that story is really cute. I told it at roll call, and the flight attendant, that's Gloria Dorman. We've known each other for many, many years. That's kind of been a standard photo among us Mac stews. That's who we call ourselves. And no big deal, but because I'd started traveling and I'd already written Paul Raby's story, my husband, who was our neighbor, my husband wanted to take the video that he did and book of my travels, and that picture happened to be in the book. And when he showed Paul that picture and his wife, Paul looked at it and he goes, "That's me." And his wife went and got his photos of him being in his service. That was 1967 or 68. And it was such a remarkable that could even have happened, and that we would move into this neighborhood and Paul would be our neighbor and I would write his Vietnam story and know Gloria. So I had them, it was during COVID, so it was a year later. I had them come up. She flew up from Houston, that's where she lives, and had them on the news. So that was,
I'm gonna play that news clip,
oh,
and just bear with me for 1 second, and let me get it going here.
we were wild back then. Those
We
were wild
do fun
girls.
things.
If a picture paints 1,000 words, then a flight attendant curled up in the turbine of a 707 just might have an awful lot to say.
And I thought, I'm good. I can do this. This is what I signed up for.
Her name is
And,
BJ Elliott Prior, an air hostess they called her way back in the day.
And it was very scary.
Because she flew for Continental Airlines as part of the Military Airlift Command, flying soldiers to the Vietnam War, and a tour later, flying the survivors home.
The guys would absolutely applaud and scream, which we loved. All those soldiers that we left behind that never made it back home, that's what hurts us. That's what war is about.
Her stories from that war are in a book she wrote. It's called Behind My Wings, which leads to one more picture and the stories it can tell.
We've always seen this soldier.
An Airman E3 to be exact, a flower in his hair, a stewardess named Gloria Dorman sitting on his lap, trying to take his mind off the war he was about to see. But nobody knew who he was. Nobody remembered his name.
When I called her, I said, Gloria, you are not going to believe this.
Because when BJ Elliott Prior showed the photo to her neighbor in Euless, a guy just 2 doors down,
Paul said, that's me. And we're all going, what? No, what?
I do recall a young lady.
meet neighbor Paul Raby, the airman in that photo 52 years later, now practically
I think I was
the boy next
I
door.
was 18 years old. I said, I'm not sure what to do. So I just
Got that figured out by now.
I'm frozen as far as this young lady, beautiful young lady, sitting on my lap. I says, my trip to Vietnam may not be as bad as I thought.
Incredible. Just incredible.
So BJ Elliott Prior decided the 2 young kids in that one happy moment from Vietnam should probably see each other again. Gloria flew in from Houston.
And I went, oh there's no way. That can't be possible. He was very good looking in that picture.
I said, he's still good looking, but he is our age.
He's got flowers.
The boy next
He's
door
bringing flowers.
arrived on a Thursday afternoon.
Hi, Mr. Paul. Hi.
How you doing?
So good to meet you after 52 years.
Do I look like the guy I was?
Well, sort of.
Cuter.
Cuter.
Okay.
Right. More sophisticated.
I am so honored to be back here again. You
The
have
very
no
next day, they would be the
idea.
guests of honor at a gathering of veterans in Fort Worth. Veterans also happy to share in this one good memory from
Which
Vietnam.
was the best part. We love you. Thank you. Thank you.
Wait a minute.
But back at the house in Euless, there was one more thing to do.
It has to be like this. Because see, I was facing the aisle.
Retake that picture.
And my husband said it was okay for I could sit on your lap again.
Hot darn, I was hoping that might happen.
And flowers and all, that's exactly what they did their best to do.
You have to do it like the picture, see?
No, but you were on my knee.
No, I was on the armrest.
No, you weren't. I remember that body warmth. I'll tell you that. I swear to God.
Veterans will tell you that in the nightmares that war can bring, they will do their best to cling to at least one good memory. That's the power a single picture can hold.
Yeah.
Especially, Paul says, if you're holding an air hostess named Gloria
Camera.
at the same time.
Your wife said no groping.
Oh, no, groping. Honey.
Watch that hand.
Oh, sorry.
In Euless, I'm Kevin Reese.
What a great story.
Yeah. That was an incredible story. I love God's stories. I truly do. As I shared with you, I wrote a couple of stories of medics in my book. And one of them, Michael Landon, who I met in Hawaii while we were walking through a hotel. And I tell his story in my book. But he wrote, because I reread his story, and this is a quote from him. He signed up for 2 tours as a medic. Medics really tug on my heart. He said, at times we fought our way through the gates of hell to reach areas of wounded soldiers. He literally did, literally, and then because I travel, I wanted to make sure that I said this. Wherever I speak, especially if it's at a retirement place, the Vietnam veterans are so special. They wait until everybody has left just about the room where I've spoken, and they wait and they come up and talk to me. And it's, sometimes we don't even say anything. I remember one time I spoke at EAA, and after I spoke, everybody had gone except for this one gentleman who's still left remaining. And he came up to me and he gave me a hug, and he just broke. He just started crying. And that's all I could do was cry with him. We didn't have to talk because I knew. So it's like moments like that when I'm always, and I say it like this, I'm always looking for my Vietnam veterans because they're that special to me. I bonded with them way back then, and that has never, ever left me. And I don't care what personality they have. If they served in Vietnam, they're already my buddy. I already love them, And it's just neat for Linda and I to keep meeting them and finding them. That's my goal, is to tell them how brave they are. And I'm able to, I have all those pins. I don't know where that bag is, but I have all the commemoratory pins. And of course, roll call, Roy Davis, you guys have given me permission that I can do a little ceremony when I'm at these retirement homes, and I can pin them. And that is so touching. And most of them cry. Most of them cry when I put that pin on them. And I make a big deal out of it, you bet, because they're that important. They've never been around, like a roll call. And so for me to do that, and I always tell them who I represent. I represent an organization that I have these pins, and the government and they allow me to pin you and honor you and thank you from our government for doing the service that you did in Vietnam. It's very meaningful, to me and to them. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Kind of getting ahead of you. I was showing these pictures here of
Yeah.
you talking, because that's what you do a lot now. You go out and you share your story,
Mm-hmm.
and then you get to talk to those veterans.
Yes.
And some of them share their stories too, don't they?
Yes. I got a phone call from a group down in Hallettsville, Texas, Hallettsville. And they called and they said they were going to have their, conference. And one of them heard me speak somewhere, and he thought I would be good for him. And would I consider coming down there? I didn't even have to hesitate. How far are you? I'll be there, And it was a 5-hour drive. And I said to him, I said, my car's pretty old. I said, so could you rent me a car? Yeah, whatever you need. So I rented a car. They put me up for the night. They paid for my food. And I was blessed to be there. It's like wherever they call, I'm going to go. I can fly free. So if you're in another state, I can fly there, So, and isn't that good? I mean, I just feel like, there's a purpose in still doing this journey that I'm doing. And I told you earlier that I wanted to mention a nurse that I met who was in Vietnam. Linda and I were at a huge event. I don't know if it was a conference or a VFW, but it was a book. They gave me a book table. It was in Fort Worth. So I'm sitting at my table, and the meeting is just getting ready to start. and in comes a gal. And I put a sign in front of my table, and it says my book and, Vietnam. And she looked at it. She goes, "I was there." I went, "You were?" "Yeah, I was a nurse." She goes, "I cleaned them and I bagged them."
Mm.
So I got up from my table and I went to her and I hugged her, and I did not want to let her go. And I could tell she didn't want to let go and hug me back because I know she would have broke. But it's like, hey, I'm not letting you go. Thank you, for doing that. I mean, can you imagine? Can you imagine what the nurses went through?
Mm.
They saw how young those nurses were, all military, and yet nobody talks about them. It's like you got to remember everybody. And that's why I tell the guys, not one branch is more important than the other. You all helped each other. I heard stories after stories. And like this one story that I just got, 3 weeks ago, it's another God story. The gal who called me, her name is Patricia Greenberg, and she has a podcast in LA, and she loves to interview veterans. And anyway, she's had me on her program. And so she called me. She goes, "I got to tell you this story." She said, "You're not going to believe it." Well, she said she's been friends with a gentleman named Dominic, who was a Vietnam veteran. He was injured there, and he survived. And when he came back, he became a judge. But he told her the story. He said, "A grenade went off. It got me in the neck. I'm laying on the jungle floor, and I'm bleeding to death. A medevac helicopter landed. The medic came to him and said, 'Can you breathe?' And he was able to tell him yes. He goes, 'Okay, going to save your life.' So he stopped the bleeding, put him on the helicopter, got him to the hospital. They saved his life. He always wanted to thank that medic, of course, for saving his life. That was always his desire. So now he's, my age, retired, had a family, all that. But now he's on his own, lives in a complex apartment building. And he was a Marine, and there's always been this other Marine kind of neighbor saying, "Hey, we need to go have a beer sometime." Yeah. Each time they would meet, "Come on, we need to go get a beer together." Finally, they did. "Okay, today." So they went down to their local bar and sitting there talking. And this guy's a Marine, and he's telling Dominic, "I wrote this song, and I really want it to be published, but it's sitting in a publisher's office, and I'm just waiting." So Dominic says, "Well, let's just call him. Let's just call him right now." And he goes, "No." He goes, "Yeah, why not? Let's call him." So the producer is on the East Coast. And so he calls him, saying, what's, the little short conversation. Then he said, "Hey, I'm talking to a Marine right now. We're having a beer. You here, talk to each other." So of course they connect. He was the medic
Wow.
on the helicopter. Is that not awesome? That all his life, when he came back from Vietnam 60 some years ago, he always wanted to thank that medic. And here God made that connection. And anyway, cool story. I love those kind of stories, as you know.
And Patricia has reached out to me and given me Dominic's contact information.
Oh,
So
good.
we're gonna have him on the podcast. So
Great. And another little gal that I met too, Her name is Susan Hunter, and she wrote The Bravest Generation, not to take away from any soldier who serves, but she said Vietnam veterans were the bravest. And great book. I highly recommend it. And of course I love my book, but it's so nice to be reading these other books. And this one here is Under His Wings by Emily.
Yeah.
Have you heard?
Campagno.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great book. She nails it with all, not just the Vietnam veterans, but with all the wars, because she had relatives, and she just writes beautifully, and I highly recommend it. And I text you, Rick, yesterday. I said I came across this scripture, Galatians 6:2. It says, "Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ." And that really spoke to me, because I have always wanted to carry the burdens of the Vietnam veterans. It's just been in my heart. Like, they can tell me anything and I'm okay with it. And I have heard some horrific stories, but I call them the bravest. They were the bravest soldiers. And not to take away from our guys who've gone to Afghanistan and Desert Storm and Iraq and those all soldiers are brave. Definitely, they're all brave. And to serve our country, each generation should be remembered and educated. I think we should teach history in schools. I'm so in favor of getting all the information out and about our soldiers. I can't speak enough.
Well, let's talk about this picture here.
Yeah, look at that picture. They had just encountered a battle, which the gentleman that sent me this picture had to do with fire. And you can see they're carrying several. They're wounded. You see the gentleman that's laying on the floor in the jungle. And the gentleman on the far right, I know him. I met him. And he shared with me that they all survived. That young man laying on the floor in the jungle survived. And they were waiting. One guy's got his hands up, waiting for the medevac, the helicopter, to come down and take him, which they did. Yeah, and this was typical. Even though I was 24, 25, they were 18 and 19.
Yeah.
That's how young they looked. And he says it all on his face. And look at what he's carrying, prepared. And, the atrocities that they went through in the jungle was horrific.
Yeah, to your point, probably the youngest average age in any conflict, Vietnam. They were so young.
Yes, that's true, Mary. That's true, because even World War II, they said the average age was around 26.
Yeah, 25, 26, I think is what that was. And I think the average age in Vietnam was 19.
Mm-hmm.
So very young. They were, to your point, just you didn't see the older people as much. So
no.
We had to draft then, so right out of high school, they'd draft the young men. So
yeah, and my brother enlisted. There were many who did enlist, and you had mentioned earlier, Rick, about taking some of the first time over, but there were others who were going back, either on R&R or going for their second tour or whatever. So we had kind of a combination. Mainly, we had the first timers, but we did have a few of those who had been there. You saw that on their faces. They knew where they were going, and it was serious. Yeah.
Tell us about this Vietnam veteran.
Yeah, that's the one that I mentioned earlier that I read. At times we fought our way through hell. Mike Landon is his name. In fact, my husband and I are planning to go back to Oahu. That's where he lives. He never came back to the States. He got as far as Hawaii, and that's where he's been ever since. He came back from Vietnam. He's doing good. He really is doing good. He did marry, but he lost his wife. But I wrote his story, and he had never told anybody his story except for his psychiatric person. And so I felt really good to write a story. Linda and I were in our bathing suits walking down to the beach, and I had no pen, no paper, nothing. So I ran into the hotel, the clerk, the front desk. I said, "Give me all the paper you have and give me some pens, you know." And they did. And I wrote a story. Yeah. Good guy. Good guy. I hope to see him in September. Have dinner with him.
One thing about it, with all your travels, you've met thousands of Vietnam veterans.
Yes. Yes.
And probably a lot of people who maybe have had relatives that were in Vietnam that are no longer with us. So
correct. Yeah. Families, you know, of veterans who were killed in the wars. They're special to us too, right? They
are.
Yeah, you know, I mean, yeah. So, you know, everybody's very meaningful when it comes to knowing somebody in the war, serving, or having a relative. And I told you we'd go to the hospital after we landed in the Philippines. And, you know, as tired as we were, we had just been up in Honolulu, flew, you know, 12 hours to the Philippines. And then we'd save all the brownies and the milk cartons that were not open and never told our soldiers on the airplane. And we'd bag them up and go to the hospital, and we'd go room to room. You know, I never forgot one soldier, and I know I told that story. But there's just some I don't. And when I, at EAA, they had me tell that story. I was on a panel with ace pilots. I didn't even know what an ace pilot was. You know, I learned so much about your military, believe me. And they had to have shot down at least 5 enemy aircrafts to become an ace pilot. And anyway, that was one of the stories they asked me. What was something really meaningful? And I remember this one soldier who had really been hit badly. His whole side was tore up bad. And I always wondered, you know, did he survive afterwards? And someone came up to me after I shared that story, and they go, "I think I know who it was. And he just passed away in his old age." So I never know. I never know where that connection is. That's, you know, and that's why I always like to ask where a Vietnam soldier was. You know, where were you? Where did you serve? I know the territory in Vietnam. So when they say the city names or the trails or the highways, I'm familiar with them. So I get an idea of where they were. And I like to know that. I like to know what year they were there. And anyway.
And you're going back to Oshkosh just in a few months?
In 2.5 weeks, going back to Oshkosh. EAA invited me back to speak. And actually, I'm going to speak in a different place. It'll be downstairs in their museum, way in the back. So I just, I hope I'll see some veterans there when I speak. I'm speaking on Monday, the very first day at 1:00 in the museum.
And tell us just a little bit about Oshkosh, because a lot of people don't realize that it's as huge as it is.
Yes, it's called EAA, Experimental Aircraft Association. And can you close the door? Yeah. And in 1 week, they have over 10,000 homemade airplanes that are flown in, and they can take off 10 or 20 at a time. We're talking tiny, tiny runways. They get top-notch controllers all over the United States that come in and volunteer. It's the busiest airport in that 1 week in the whole world because of how many landings they do. EAA fly-in. Yeah, my husband says, yeah. And they honor veterans real big on honoring veterans, always. And one of my first times there, they were having a parade, and it was veterans. They were marching down the center of the street. It happened to be close to Christmas, and Santa Claus was in the middle, but he was a veteran, but he had the Santa Claus stuff on. And I just had to go up and just give him hugs, because Vietnam. And when I gave Santa Claus a hug, briefly I said, I transported you guys in and out, 69, 71. And they stopped. He gave me a big hug and said, welcome home. I don't know why I broke. It's like, not for me, it's for you, but I broke, and then they let me take a picture of all of them, So I love EAA because of everything that they do. And I'm very honored that they call me back, and I share my Vietnam stories.
And you speak a lot around the country.
Yes.
And if there's people that want to get a hold of you for
Yes.
speaking engagements, they can go to your website, behindmywings.com.
Yes, then they can also go to BJ Prior, Prior, at ymail.com, and I'll respond right away to an invite. If they invite me, I'll go.
And, you live in the DFW Metroplex, so
Yes, I
I
do.
know there's a lot of different organizations that you would be a very interesting speaker for them. And you mentioned going to the care centers for the elderly, and
Yes.
here's some Vietnam veterans.
Yep. I'm always looking for my Vietnam veterans. You bet. You bet. Yeah. I share, always that I love being an American, and because of our veterans who have given us this freedom and who are willing to lay down their life for our freedoms, means a great deal to me and to Americans as well. I proudly wear my jacket. I have so many pins and patches on it. I don't think I can get any more on there, but when a veteran will take off his hat and give me his only pin and put it on my jacket.
We'll find a place for it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. So God's good. And, he enabled me to write a talk on healing from my PTSD. And anytime I have an opportunity to share that with veterans, I do. And there's our POW, Ken Cordier, that we talked about.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Just I've been blessed, and only because of our veterans. Only because of our veterans. And, of course, my relationship with God. And thank you.
This is Lieutenant General Richard Carey. Korean War veteran at the Chosin Reservoir. And then in Vietnam, he was in charge of, whenever the Saigon fell, he was in charge of the evacuation, and Tony Wood from Dallas, a Marine that kind of put all that into action.
Yes.
And got thousands and thousands of people in Vietnam out.
Yes. And then I was able to get involved with the Medal of Honor Museum when we held to remember the 50th anniversary, of leaving Vietnam. And I got to work with, that was the Judge Carr, councilman, the mayor of Arlington, Jim Ross, Nathan then. He was born and raised in Vietnam. His parents escaped. He came here when he was 11 years old. He's now, he does reserve. He honors America. He's so thankful that he wanted to thank our Vietnam veterans. And because of him and Mayor Jim Ross, we were able to put together that enormous memory event at the Medal of Honor Museum. And I was really, really touched to work with the general. I worked with General John Campbell. Every organization needs a general to kind of run things, and say,
or a good first sergeant.
Yeah, or a good sergeant. Yes, Mary, a good sergeant. Those titles are appropriate and needed all along the way. And now I'm going to work with Damian Harvey, who he and I, and you guys know about it, is the monument that's being built in Fort Worth. It's going to be beautiful. Jim Hodgkin is the one who began it, and Fort Worth has really gotten behind it. They've put up $200,000 to match anybody who does it. So that's my next project that I'm going to be working on. They already have been working on it, but I've been kind of busy. So
Mary was involved for a long time with it as it was kind of getting started, and we both went to the groundbreaking ceremony.
I was there. Yeah, I remember. And so it's going to be dedicated and ready by 2026 on Veterans Day. So that'll be a special celebration.
Be a busy Veterans Day.
Yeah, it will be a busy Veterans Day, that's for sure. Yeah, can't quite do everything, but we do our best, right? Do our best.
Yeah. In your book, you're really you talk a lot about being young, being a flight attendant, and kind of getting caught up in that lifestyle. And you had some struggles. And one day you went to a party in California.
Yes.
And that's the day that you kind of changed from that lifestyle.
Yes.
To the lifestyle you lead now. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I don't throw any stones at anybody's story because I certainly have mine as well. It was wartime. We were single, and we were coffee, tea, or me. Not everybody. I can't say that for every stewardess out there or air hostess, but I definitely was. My lifestyle wasn't great. Drinking was a big thing. And, I understand why we did a lot of that partying hard because of what we were doing. It wasn't easy. And it just kind of numbed your feelings. And then, in the 70s, 1970, 71, drugs were introduced to me. It was kind of social, not addictive, but just social. And I was invited to this party. And I will say, I'd been flying for 5 years, a lifestyle. My last years, I was raised in Hollywood. And it's crazy lifestyle, just crazy lifestyle. And I was invited to this party in Manhattan Beach, California. It was right on the beach. When I walked into this house, I knew no one. I looked around the room. They'd already spiked the punch. They already had drugs available for whatever you wanted. And I thought, what am I doing here? This is not for me. So I picked up my purse and I walked out immediately. I hadn't even been in there more than 5 minutes. And I slipped off my shoes and I walked down to the beach. And I think that was my encounter. As I shared with you, my parents were deaf, so we didn't go to church. And I didn't really know God. I thought there was a God, but I really didn't know him. So I'm walking down the beach and I'm crying, I just feel empty, all alone, just not liking my life at all. And I asked God if he was real. And the moment I said, "Are you real?" Because I really need to know. I don't like it down here, and I want to come home. Why I said that, I don't know, but the moment I did, I had this wonderful peace that came on me, and I really sensed and felt his presence. And I also saw footprints that were facing mine, and I hadn't taken anything. I hadn't drank anything. I was pretty sober, pretty straight. But I saw these footprints, and as I was staring at them, the water came all the way up to where I was and just washed away those footprints. And I heard a little voice say inside of me, mind you, I'm listening to the waves crashing, and it's nighttime, and it's dark, and there's nobody there on the beach except for me and God. And he said, "You will never be alone again." And I turned around and went back to my car, and I had never read the Bible, so I went and bought a Bible. But anyway, long story short, I met God that night. He changed my life. And I'm here today because he did save my life. And he has healed me of my PTSD. And he's a good God. And I have strong faith in him.
And you are a blessing to so many people.
Right. Are you thinking about writing a book to add some of these new stories?
No, I don't think so. My husband wants me to get on a podcast, but I'm not there. You know, I just like being invited and speaking, and trying to find my Vietnam veterans. I told my husband, if I die before he does, we're going to celebrate 50 years this year.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. And I said, if I die before you make sure there's a flag next to my photo, because I want that flag next to me.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah. And that wall, that wall speaks a lot, you know, even the traveling ones that come through Texas, you know, I've gone to. That was a hard moment for me.
Mm.
Yeah, because I knew a lot of them could have been on my flights. I figured 70,000 were approximately what I transported in those 2 years.
Wow.
70,000, and made almost 100 landings in Vietnam. We went Saigon, Bien Hoa, Cam Ranh Bay, and Da Nang. And I hated Da Nang. I didn't like Bien Hoa either. But come to find out, they were all bad. My first time into Saigon, and then my last time, they had a little miniature tower when we taxied in. And that wasn't the big tower, but it was a little tower. It had been blown up. I thought, well, maybe it's time. 2 years, okay. I've done my tours, and that's when I put my transfer in, came back to domestic. And that was hard. You know, transition is hard, especially if you come out of a war zone. That's why I can really relate to our veterans who come back from wars. It's not easy.
Yeah, and you didn't get any assistance, nor did the Vietnam. Like today, when you come back, you know, there's so much help and there's so much transition for assistance for preparing the family before you go, preparing everybody for you to come home, and then preparing you to go and preparing you to come home. There's so much more out there, but we learned that from all the mistakes that we made in Vietnam. We learned, you know, that was not the way. We had such a time span in between Vietnam and then Desert Storm. And then really when we got into, you know, after 9/11, that's when we really could take all those years of learning what we had done wrong and make things better so that people aren't dealing with a lot of the same stuff that you've seen these guys deal with.
Yeah, and that's so good. That's so good. And I have to give credit to the Vietnam veterans because their resistance, they resisted everything that was thrown against them, the society that, you know, treated them terribly. They stood tall. They knew what they did. They served proudly. wasn't easy, but they served, and that flag means the world to them. And whatever anybody threw at them, they were tough. They could take it. And because they never wanted anybody else to go through what they did, they make sure, and I know it's not easy with the VA. I know there's stories after stories of, trying to get things done. I know that. But yes, Mary, it's much better now. And the new book that I'm going to start, I love it. This is by Alan Clark. He lost both.
He's a great American. I like Alan.
He says, I gave my legs in Vietnam. I mean, what a patriot, He'd be a great one to come and speak at roll call.
For sure.
I visited with him.
Oh, you did?
I have, and a West Point graduate, double amputee, served in the administration for George H. Bush, and
yes,
is a real patriot.
Yes, yeah, and a lovely wife, Linda Clark, lovely couple. So, yeah, as I see all the neat people I get to meet.
For sure.
I mean, isn't God good?
All the time.
All
the time. I know. I love you guys. I appreciate it.
We love you too. And we're excited that you and Linda Lou are going to be coming back to roll call whenever we make our move back to the edge of Fort Worth instead of out of Fort Worth. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to seeing a lot of the guys that I've so missed. So yeah.
You talk about those guys, and I noticed whenever we were playing that news clip and they showed roll call, some of those people that we saw, Billy, the Vietnam veteran, and then Carmen Giese, Battle of the Bulge. They aren't with us anymore. All we've got are those memories. So,
right.
Yeah, I know. But aren't we fortunate to have heard those stories, know those stories, knew them, and I just counted a blessing that we knew them, and look at how much fun we're going to have in heaven. I don't think we'll be sitting around talking about war stories, but it'll be great to be with them.
It will be.
Yeah.
Behind My Wings, a great book. And if you're interested in talking with BJ about coming to speak to a group, or if you've got some more stories, just reach out to her.
Tell me.
And if you were on some of those flights and you think, I think I remember that lady, well, for sure, reach out to her. So,
yeah. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Mary. Really,
we're always blessed to have you around, BJ.
Aw, so sweet. So sweet. Well, love our veterans. Love you guys. Thank you for your service.
Well, thank you for being with us today. And behindmywings.com, you can go there, find out more about BJ and her book. You can purchase the book there too, and she'll inscribe it.
I would, yeah. All right, bless you guys.
We love you. We look forward to seeing you soon.
See you.
And Linda.
And Linda, yeah, and Linda Lou.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, thank you for being on today.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Goodbye to all my veteran friends. See you soon.
See you soon.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Wow. What a beautiful person, and she does so much to love and honor our veterans.
She does at that.
And just you can see all the stuff that goes on whenever you see her in a Veteran Connect, because they've got a bond that other people don't have.
Yeah, that's right. And it would be neat. I know that it's not on her heart right now, but it'd be neat for her to write some of those other stories in another book. And, she's learning so many new ones all the time. Who's telling their stories? So that's why we want to keep telling those Vietnam veterans, you've got to reach out to Texas Tech. Biggest Vietnam oral history in the country, and really want to capture those stories. So if people like BJ aren't capturing them, somebody needs to do it. Chuck Hodge, another person that they can reach out to that will do it for not for public consumption, but for private. So, it depends on whether they want to keep it private or not. Texas Tech, if they're willing to have it go, or it's not private, but if they just want to capture the story and have it for their family after they're gone, Chuck Hodge is a great resource for that. He'll spend all the time, cost them nothing.
And he's got such a passion for doing that.
He does. Yep. Every time he comes to a luncheon, he's looking for the new vet. Who are the people that stood up today that said they were new? I need to go talk to them. And you can see him almost chasing them down.
I had somebody not long ago, they sent me a text and they said, can I talk to you? And I said, sure. So I called him. I said, I've just got a question. I've got this guy that's approached me about me telling the story. His name's Chuck Hodge. Is he okay? Is he on the? I said, absolutely. But
yeah, I've had him reach out to me and ask the same thing. Is this guy real? Yeah, that's yep, he is. He certainly is.
I bet that he's probably sat down with BJ and gotten her story too. So
yeah, probably.
What a great. We're just so blessed to have so many great people around us.
Amen.
Roll call. We had a great roll call with Tim
Lee.
Tim Lee, double amputee, Vietnam veteran, and had a great story.
That he did. It was and he had humor in it too. So is neat how he wove that in there. And I know that you captured that and put it out there on Facebook so folks can watch it. And he's got a lot of stuff up on the internet if you go look for him. But he definitely has a very powerful story. And it was as quiet as I've seen it, and nobody was getting up to move.
That's right. That's right. And August, we'll be back at Birchman.
It does sound like we're going to be back. So we have been blessed to be able to be at Willow Park. That Brother Clark was willing to take us in the time being. And so we are eternally grateful for that. And he also is the one that hooked us up with Tim Lee to come and speak. And has been there and, done the prayer every month at our luncheons for us, and his whole team very welcoming. So we can't thank Willow Park enough. Obviously, if you're in the Weatherford, Aledo, that whole area out there, and you're looking for a Baptist church to go to, that's probably a good one, really good one. And it's a beautiful building. Lots of space, lots of stuff for the kids to do. So that's an option for folks that are out in the market for that. But they were really good to us, and we consider Birchman home. That's kind of been home since 2016. And a lot of folks haven't come like BJ and many others. We have one assisted living center that hasn't come the whole time that we've been there because they're limited to how far they're allowed to go, which we just picked up a new one from like right across the street from Willow Park. They just started coming last month. And so when I said, we're going to go back to Birchman, she had to figure out what was that distance. And she said, oh, it's still within the distance. So now these folks that just started coming last month from that assisted living center can continue to come at Birchman because they have a certain distance they're allowed to take the.
Is it? You think that's the same center that Tippy was in?
I don't know if it is or not. She was I don't remember which one she was at, but this is Clear Fork. It's right across the street from.
Okay, this one was just down the road where we had our birthday parade.
Yeah. I don't remember the name of the one that Tippy was in. I'll have to look, but they brought quite a few residents.
Now, in August, we've got Gretchen Evans.
Well, so Gretchen let us know a couple days ago that she has has to take care of some family stuff with children, and her has a family member deploying, needs to be there to help with the grandkids. So she is not going to make August. So we are right now in the process of finding another speaker. So
Okay.
that's where I am on that one. That was like 2 days ago I got that.
At least it was 2 days and a month and a half before.
Right. It wasn't 2 days before the lunch. That makes it much harder to find another speaker.
Well, speaking of roll call, we have, we're 501c3, and we have a gun raffle, 20 guns in 20 minutes. And we'll do that raffle drawing at the August meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And let me move this. There's a QR code there, or you can go to roll-call.org and get more information about that. And this is a very unique drawing because once a winner's picked, their name goes right back in. So the last time we did it, we had 2 or 3, maybe 4 people that won multiple weapons. So
Right. Yeah, it was pretty good. And it's not July 4th yet, so we're still running the promotion.
and
Right
this
there.
promotion, if you send somebody there to buy some tickets, and they say, hey, well, if you go to this QR code, they buy through that, then you get your another entry into the drawing. So
Right. Yep. You'll have to, the member will have to email Jeff at, and he's got it right here, Henshin at roll-call.org. And Jeff will put your name on a ticket when he gets that email from you that you have a friend or family member who's not a roll call member, that you have them purchase 3 or more tickets. You'll get an extra raffle ticket for free. It's a pretty good deal.
it's a real good deal. And, you've got a lot of great people that you work with on the board, and Jeff's one of them. He puts things like this together, and he's such a good organizer at doing things just like this. So
Yeah, he's very creative. I would have probably never come up with something like that. That's very creative.
very creative. The July the 19th, we have the Beers and Betty's, and this is going to be, where's it going to be?
At Perry's Pizzeria.
And Tap House.
Right. That's up near that 35W and Heritage Trace area. It's right up in there.
Okay, up there by Don's house.
Yep. And it's always fun.
And then we have the Patriot Roundup, the Air Power Foundation, Fort Worth Air Power Council. This is July the 31st, up the Cowtown Coliseum and the historic stockyards. So go to airpowerfoundation.org and you can find out more about how you can get involved in Patriot Roundup. The Skyball is coming October 25th, again with the Air Power Foundation. A lot of stuff being planned for the fall. It's kind of the season for the nonprofits to raise their money. Roll call, sponsor a veteran. If you go to this QR code, you can get signed up. $20 a month can sponsor a veteran's lunch and help with some of the costs Roll Call has of taking our veterans around. So a lot of things going on.
Yeah, it's always busy.
It's a busy time for some people. I think that you probably slowed down a little bit.
Yeah, a hair getting ready for the annual meeting, but actually taking a little time off. My husband is on leave, so we're taking a little bit of time to do some activities out and about.
Refresh and get recharged. So
go do some stand-up paddle boarding.
That ought to be fun.
Yeah, we enjoy it.
Well, thanks for everybody that's been a part of this, and just go to behindmywings.com and read more about Betty or BJ, and be sure to get her book because it's a great book. And hope to see y'all at Roll Call in August. And for sure, we'll see you next week on Hometown Heroes. Mary, thanks a lot for being here today. And it was a great honor to have Betty with us. So
Amen.
we'll see y'all next week on Hometown Heroes. Iwo Jima survivor Don Graves singing God Bless America on his 100th birthday.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above, from the mountain to the prairie, to the ocean, why we're born. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, our home, sweet home. Oh, thank you.
Thank you for being a part of Hometown Heroes podcast. Visit our YouTube channel and subscribe today. We look forward to seeing you next week on Hometown Heroes, the voice of heroes, the voice for heroes.